Okay, good evening. We're going to get started here. Had a little technical difference, but I think we are all ready to go now. I'd like to say welcome to our Operation and Public Safety Committee meeting. Today is Tuesday, January 18th. We have quite a few items on our agenda for today. Call this meeting to order. I'm going to ask Kim, will you mind doing a roll call, please?
Thank you, Council President. Council President Boyce.
Here.
Councilmember Fincher. Here. Councilmember Kaur. Here. Councilmember Larmer.
Here.
Councilmember Michaud.
Here.
Councilmember Thomas.
Here.
Councilmember Troutner.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kim. We're going to move on to the approval of the minutes from January 4th. I have a motion for approval of the minutes.
So moved.
Second.
Motion been moved and second. Any question, discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All opposed? Let the record show unanimous pass. We'll move on to item number 5, which is the payment of the bills. I'd like to entertain a motion for payment of the bills.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All opposed? Let the record show unanimous pass. We're going to move on to item number B on 5. Item number 5, item B on the 5 is the utility shutoff. And I think we're going to have Molly is to give us a presentation.
Bartlemy. I'm the City of Kent Customer Service Manager, and today I'm going to be going over the water shutoff moratorium and the impacts that's had to our city water utility accounts.
Are you okay to advance it, Molly?
What's that?
Are you okay to advance the slides?
Sure, just
The little arrow button. Here, I got it for you.
Okay, thank you. So for the agenda, first we're going to talk about Proclamation 20-23. What this proclamation did is it suspended shutoffs and late fees. Kind of go over some of our shutoff statistics, necessary changes we've had to make, what we have done, what's next, and then open it up for questions. So Proclamation 20-23 went into effect in March 2020. And what this proclamation did is it prohibited disconnecting residential customer water service and charging late fees. So it was extended multiple times, I'm going to say over 15 times, and then it eventually expired on September 30th, 2021. So when this went into effect, the first thing we really had to do was stop shutting off services. So what this chart shows you, if you can see the blue, we kind of use 2019 as our baseline. So really easy average number. In 2019, we shut off about 100 accounts per month for delinquency. So then you can see in the green, that's 2020. So you can see January and February, we're kind of right about that 100 number. And then in March, that's when we suspended shutoffs. So you can see in March, we would have shut off about 133 accounts. And then by April, that immediately jumped up to 400. So even though we weren't shutting off accounts, we were still kind of running those reports and kind of just seeing what our trends were. So you can see those trends just continued upward at a pretty dramatic rate. We didn't necessarily run this same report every month in 2021, but we looked at other things, and those numbers, it kind of continued the same and then started to drop a little bit at the end of 2021, but again, very high numbers. With the highest, 758 accounts that would have been up for a shutoff in December 2020. Again, huge increase when we're looking at typically 100 a month. So the other thing that we immediately did was change our shutoff notice to an urgent notice. So we still thought it was important to make sure customers knew that their accounts were delinquent, but we definitely needed to make an update there. And then normally when we sent off a shutoff notice, that's when the account is assessed a $10 late fee. So we stopped charging those late fees effective April 2020. And again, kind of looking at 2019 as a baseline, in 2019, we charged over $128,000 in late fees. So if we look at between April 2020 and January 2022, if we would have been assessing late fees on these accounts, we would have assessed over $280,000. Some things that we have done We collaborated with our neighboring cities. We did customer outreach, offered utility assistance, did payment arrangements, and then we did also have to start filing liens. So we'll get into a little more details on each of these in the next few slides. You know, when this first started, this was, you know, uncharted territory for all of us. So I did reach out to some of our neighboring cities just to kind of develop those relationships, but also start connecting with some of our neighboring cities. So we really were sharing ideas, ways to navigate through all this, and kind of, you know, try to be a little consistent between all of us. But the one message that was clear throughout all of these meetings and communications we had is that we were all encountering similar issues and concerns. So we did have some meetings, but then we also, you know, it was great to have those connections. So if somebody heard something, that we were just sharing ideas throughout the proclamation. This is an example of some of the customer outreach we did. In our August 2020 utility bill, we included this insert in all of our bills. A couple things to highlight there. You know, this was a stressful time and a scary time for folks, so we did want to let them know that we had suspended turning off water and late fees. So on there it says we have temporarily suspended late fees and water service interruptions. The other point that we really wanted to make is, though we had suspended late fees and service interruptions, that doesn't mean that your utility charges are waived. So just to read, I think an important part on here is, customers are still responsible for paying for their utilities, and the costs for these services cannot be waived. Our goal is to help keep water customers, to help our water customers avoid a possible service interruption when we return to our standard utility procedures. So again, it's letting customers know that, you know, we have suspended shutoffs and late fees, but really, you know, these bills will continue. Additional customer outreach, those monthly mailers that we talked about earlier that were usually shut off that became urgent, we continued to send those on a monthly basis. So we removed the shut off language, you know, kept the notification of past due balances, encouraged customers to reach out to us if they were financially impacted by the pandemic. And again, that reinforcement that the customer is still responsible for these charges incurred. As we got into 2021 and it was clear that the proclamation was ending, we knew that we needed to kind of start using stronger language on our mailers, and we thought it was important to notify customers, you know, really let them know that the moratorium was expiring, really encourage customers to apply for a payment arrangement. In fact, in our August and September mailers, we even included a copy of the application. They were also available on our website at our customer service counter, but we wanted to make sure everyone had one in hand. And then just really, you know, alerting customers that we were returning to our standard procedures. We kind of went from an urgent notice to a final notice to eventually the shut-off notice, and just kind of, again, made that language a little stronger, especially as we looked at, you know, kind of September through December, the end of 2021. About mid-proclamation, we partnered with MSC, and we used some of our City of Kent CARES funding for utility assistance. We did a lot of public outreach. The notice was in Mayor Ralph's weekly newsletter, and then it was great because customers that had reached out to us, you know, saying they were struggling either by email or phone call, we tracked all those, and we immediately sent them all an application if they'd emailed us, and then we just started calling them. So we made lots of connections that way. And then also, you know, customers that were calling us for payment or asking for payment arrangements, we were able to tell them about the program. I will tell you that the results were definitely a little disappointed. We were really hoping that people would take, you know, to apply for this program. So we were able to help 32 customers and awarded over $17,000 in direct utility assistance. So there was, you know, many customers that were grateful, but we were really, really hoping that more people would apply for that program.
Molly, we got a question here, please.
Sure.
Councilmember Thomas.
How you doing? Okay. Listen, I had the same reaction when I saw the 17,000 down here at the bottom, and wasn't it about 2 or 3 slides prior, we missed out on like 180 some thousand?
I think in the late fees build, is that what you were?
Well, just everything in general.
281, late fee.
What's that?
Was it 281? What the amount?
Yeah, I think it was about 200.
281.
That was,
Okay.
those were late fees that we didn't bill because we'd suspended
Right.
late fees.
Right.
Yeah, so this program was to help customers pay for their utility bills so they could apply through MSC and get direct assistance to help cover their utility bills. Yeah, we were definitely hoping for larger numbers than that.
Yeah.
Chair, I have a question.
Sorry, Councilmember Lumber, sorry.
Sure. So, question, did we make this available in multiple languages? I'm wondering if there was a language barrier that led to less applications.
That was, unfortunately, we did not. And that was definitely a miss. It was kind of, with that CARES funding, at first we weren't even sure if we could really use it for this, this need. There was concerns about it being a direct revenue replacement that we couldn't use for CARES funding. So it was, that was definitely something that we could have done a better job in getting it out in the multiple languages.
Do we have an opportunity to do it, to revisit that in multiple languages again?
This particular program, it was just a limited time.
Okay.
So this one, this particular one has closed. There is another program offered by MSC currently that we're advertising, and we can absolutely look at getting that out more in our top languages.
I think that would be key. Thank you.
Yes. On to payment arrangements. So kind of throughout the proclamation, when we could not do shutoffs, we kept payment arrangements pretty informal, letting customers know that it was more of an encouraged payment. They would let us know, what they wanted to pay, and when we'd work with them, letting them know that when the proclamation did expire, we were going to require a more formal process. So we implemented that formal process in August 2021. The requirements for a payment arrangement are that the customer has to pay their current charges and 1/12 of their past due. This is going to be challenging because I think, when we think about people doing a payment plan, you kind of think of a fixed amount. And it's not just that fixed amount, but then they're also, they have to cover their current charges. So currently we have, or as of January 12th, we have 161 accounts on payment arrangements, and that average delinquent balance is over $1,500. So, just kind of that average person has to pay their current bill plus $126 a month. We are looking at extending some of those customers out to 18 months just to try to get that number down a little bit. But we are really hopeful again that customers are, reaching out and finding those utility assistance programs because there are some high bills out there. The way that our system works is that late fees are automatically assessed on delinquent accounts. We definitely don't want our payment arrangement accounts to get those late fees. So we are going to go back quarterly and review the months that they met the payment arrangement. We'll absolutely waive all those fees.
Hey, Molly, is any of this stuff shows up on the credit report for these people?
No, so these particular bills, it is interesting. They stay with the property, not the person. So there is no reporting to credit agencies on these bills.
All right, thank you.
Sure.
I have a question too, Bill.
Please.
Thank you, Mr. President. Pat, this is more directed towards you. In the retail field, if I have somebody a customer has a balance of $100 and he's supposed to be paying $25 a month, but he only makes a payment of $10, the courts look at that usually as, the customer is making an attempt. He may not meet satisfactory needs of you, but at least he's trying. Is that kind of true here? You sit down here at 1/12, you've got a pretty rigid system here, so it's not quite the same. I
think that's actually a question for Molly. I don't know if this has any flexibility built into it. So.
Okay.
Yeah, so one of the things, regarding, the payment arrangements, there are some stipulations on us. When this first came around, we were making plans and thinking that we wanted to go a certain route. There are RCWs that talk about collection on delinquent water accounts. So typically you can only, actually, Kim, if you go to the next slide, I have some of this on this next slide. So there's an RCW 3521-290, and this RCW, they changed it to really address the delinquent balances incurred during the moratorium. So they gave us 3 months after the expiration of the moratorium to file liens on accounts that had charges that were incurred during that time. So to secure the debt owed to the city, liens were filed on all water accounts that had moratorium period charges past due that were not on a payment plan. One of the other things in that RCW is that talks about you're able to not file a lien as long as somebody is on a payment arrangement and keeping it current. And so if they're not, then we have rules around how long we have to file a lien. So that is kind of disappointing that, we don't have necessarily the flexibility we'd like to come up with a program, because we definitely know these are going to be hard arrangements for customers to follow.
If I may.
Please.
So I'm having a little bit of a hard time, and I'm sorry I'm not part of the group here, but don't a lot of the people in our area have received $600 per person from the federal government?
I don't know a lot of details about that, but yeah, you do know there's been
Somebody help me out here, aren't they?
I don't know the answer to that. I'm assuming that they're receiving $600. I mean, there's
Per person.
but there's other things that probably food and all those type of things.
Yeah, but you got to have water, and you got to have heat
Yeah,
and food.
but they if you got this on a waiver, I'm putting less interest on this here and more than I can feed my family.
Well, that's what happens, and so what's happening here is they're digging a bigger hole and just continuing to go down this hole, especially if you start adding on late fees. Wow, then you're really adding up some fast, I don't know what the answer is, Molly, but okay. Sorry to interrupt, I just had to.
Yeah.
I mean, I know some relatives of mine were getting $600 per person from the federal government, and that helped them get out of some situations they were in.
Right.
So I just wondered if some of our people must be also getting that stipend. So I don't know the answer. Nobody else does here either.
No, I'm just guessing there's a lot of people.
You guys all make too much money out there.
No, I'm guessing there's a lot of people was hurting during this here crisis, right? So, I mean, I would imagine if people could afford to pay their bill, they probably would have, right? I just think, it's a lot of people was hurting during this time, and I mean, I get it. I mean, I'm sure people probably want to pay their bills, but, just couldn't afford to. Councilmember Lama, real quick, please.
Yeah, so I just wanted to clarify, because Les had asked about applying late fees and you dig yourself into a further hole. I just want to be really, really clear. We have not applied a late fee.
Correct.
We have no intention to apply late fees.
So that,
Even though the system does, we're going to.
right, so it's kind of an all or nothing, so we haven't started yet. So we could have started in October, and that's going to be on one of our what next, because we were talking about resuming in February, so that will be a discussion, again, looking at that lost revenue, but also, like you said, adding late fees to people that are behind. It is a
I just,
conversation.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Thank you, Mr. President. So if you started turning off their water, I think you'd see a very quick change of action on the part of the creditors here, that they would start paying something or making arrangements, because you guys are bending over backwards to make arrangements. I mean, the city of Kent has been wonderful about helping out here. I don't know. I know you don't want to turn off anybody's water. On the other hand, they've had notice after notice after notice that that's what's going to happen, and then we don't follow through. So I don't know. We're kind of up in this air thing.
Yeah, I think our goal the whole time is, how do we keep people connected to water, but also follow, all of these policies and procedures. And it is tough. Kind of looking at, filing these liens when that proclamation was expiring, and we knew that we had 3 months to file liens. I think this kind of speaks to a little bit what we were talking about. So about mid-November, we kind of ran the list to kind of isolate, okay, what are the accounts that are subject to lien filing? And to start out with, we had 442 accounts on that list. The staff in customer service did an amazing job, because our goal was to reach out to each one of those accounts individually, either by phone or email. I will tell you, for me, I reached out to quite a few, and it was shocking. The first few I made, the first person I talked to, they said, "Is that the account where I owe like $2,500? And I said, "Yes, that's the one." And then, you know, we're offering them, they have the ability to do a payment arrangement. And they said, "Can I just pay that?" Okay. And my next couple calls were just like that, and it was shocking. Now, I'll tell you that quickly changed. They were not all like that. Where the hardest conversations are these property owners that have tenants. And again, these bills stay with the property. So now we're putting liens on an account where somebody has a tenant in there that has a high water bill. You know, maybe they haven't paid rent, and this isn't necessarily a landlord that owns multiple properties. You know, and they're telling us how they're at risk at losing their home because this bill isn't being paid and it's not shut off, and the charges are just continuing. So I will say, you know, the nice thing is, you know, 131 liens is still way more than we would have liked to file, but we really were able to get that number down dramatically by having that individual outreach. And again, those 131, that's, you know, we just didn't hear back from them. No payment arrangement or payment.
Molly, let me ask you a different question. How many homes were cut off last month or last year?
So we have not resumed shutoffs, but on an average month, it really is about 100 accounts that we shut off.
Really?
Like kind of pre all of this. It was.
You actually shut their water off. Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Michelle?
Thank you, Chair. Molly, thank you for this information. I know you're not done. Okay, so where in liens does this fall? So they haven't paid, you've sent them letters, you've made these phone calls and emails, but you also mentioned shutting off water. So where does this come in?
Right, so these are accounts that, it is kind of confusing. So the lien, really what that does is secure the debt. So it doesn't stop the shut off, but what we've done at this point is we've kind of, secured that debt, but they still are subject to shut off. So this was more of a way just to make sure that the city could get those funds.
Okay, and I just want to say it's super important to make sure these people that you're filing liens against actually know that they owe this money. I've been in this situation, unfortunately. I never received a bill for like 3 years for sewer and had a lien on my house that I didn't even know about. So it's just really important. You have to make sure that these people actually know that they owe money. I mean, once you get your water shut off, you're probably going to know that you owe someone money. So I just want to say it's super important. And that record of having that lien does stay on your file for, even after you pay it.
Right.
Forever. So,
Sorry that happened.
yeah, me too.
And then, we did want to wait as long as possible and try to get as many people as possible on payment arrangements or paying that bill. But we did have to start filing those liens mid-December so we could have them all filed by the required date, the end of the month.
We've got another question for Councilmember Troutner, please.
Thank you, Council President. Just one quick thing. So you said it's a lien on the property. So if it is let's say it's a house that someone owns that they're renting to an individual, that affects the landlord at this point, correct?
It does.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Go ahead, Molly.
Is that?
You can proceed.
Okay. As far as what next, we're discussing again, resuming late fees starting next month. We did on our last mailer say that late fees may resume going forward, just to kind of start that notification. I will absolutely say we want to make sure that we've got a policy to at least remove one when requested. We don't want to put another hurdle in front of somebody. The goal is to kind of start getting people, transitioning back to our regular operating procedures. So maybe some more discussion on that. Resume shutoffs. This is a tough one. We certainly don't don't want to do this. But again, there are rules that if we let accounts get so far behind, we're not going to be able to collect. So typically, again, pre-COVID, we shut off accounts that are 2 months past due. We want to kind of start with the 4 months past due that were required, and then probably eventually, go to 3 months. But again, if we don't shut those off, then we are, might not be able to collect those funds. And then those accounts that are liened, we do really need to start shutting those off. Again, these are, a lot of these are landlords that are very frustrated that we haven't shut these off. And really, as far as, doing those, it will really be based on capacity, because we need to make sure, we can only do so many. We need to make sure that we have the staff to get those accounts back on, and enough people, answering the phone to take payments. We'll also have to review the payment arrangement accounts to ensure that the payments are being made, connecting with those customers that are behind. And if shut off, we really do want to allow the customer to pay all their past due charges and get turned back on. Again, really, it's standard practices. If you are turned off, it is payment in full to get restored.
It's a quick moment. Councilmember Fincher, Core, do you have any questions? Okay, Councilmember Core.
Thank you, Council President. Thank you, Molly, for the presentation. I appreciate all the information. And I appreciate you and your department reaching out to these customers and having conversations with them. So thank you for that. But like Councilmember Larmer mentioned, I think we should still have the opportunity to reach out to our communities in, with language access and translating those materials. Because there are families that might still be needing help and they just don't know that there is help available. But thank you so much.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Yeah, just I wanted to comment on the language, right? I mean, I think that should be a standard for us going forward, right? Whenever we communicate, I think we know the top 4 or 5 languages. So, I think Derek and team, I think going forward, regardless of what it is, I mean, it's something we should automatically do. That's just a comment I like to make. And then, if someone need to reach out regarding this year, who do they call? City? Is there someone watching this year?
Sure.
About to get the water cut off, who they call?
Yeah, definitely. So our customer service phone number is 253-856-5201. Also, a good email, just customerservice@kentlaw.com. That's going to be probably the best 2 ways to reach out. Or, of course, they can reach out to me directly. I'm happy to.
My last comment, so if I have a home and in my water, I can't pay my bills and got small kids, babies and all that stuff there, does any of that stuff take a play at all?
It's hard.
Yeah, I get it. Yeah.
When you are shutting off, there isn't if this situation, we can do this. I mean, if there's any way, for example, if we've confirmed that somebody has an appointment and with an organization to get an assistance, like maybe then we can, but there really isn't a lot of, in this particular, when you say like children, that's, that's hard. It's,
Yeah, it's tough. We kind of knew, this was coming, right? In lots of categories. Well, for numerous 2 years, I've been kind of getting some support, and nothing lasts forever, right? So we knew this would be coming back. So I just, hope that people reach out and the city is willing to work with them and make some effort towards trying to pay the bill. So,
and I know, we know a lot of these customers. I grew up in Kent, so I recognize a lot of names on the the list. So it's hard. It's one of those things where we definitely, we're not looking forward to shutting off again, but I think we know we can't keep extending it out.
Yep.
We do need to get, the people that can pay. I feel like, kind of our bills kind of become the one at the bottom. We need to kind of raise it up and priority on it.
Well, great presentation. I guess I would ask, and if it's okay with there, I would like to have this come back to us maybe another, what do you guys think, another 2 months? So you think it'll be okay, council member?
Yeah,
2 months?
March-ish, yeah.
Yeah, maybe 2 months, come back and just kind of let us know how's it working out.
Yeah,
if you don't
absolutely.
mind. Okay.
All right.
Thank you. Great job, Molly. Appreciate your
I think
presentation.
Councilmember Fincher might
I'm
have
sorry,
a question.
Councilmember Fincher. I'm sorry.
Yes, does anyone in the room have an idea of how long it will take to get that translated into the top 5 languages and out to the customers?
I think they'll take an action item, their and team, and they'll get back with us and let us know. They don't know at this time here, Councilman Fletcher, but they will get back with us and let us know.
Okay, because I was just thinking on that language access, aside from, because that's going to take some time, it might also be a good idea to make sure that, for instance, the KC DIG meeting, that it's mentioned there, and we have a network of trusted partners who have a lot to do with foreign language residents. So it might be a good idea just to send them an alert, letting them know if they hear, to please be sure to send them on to the city if they hear that people are having trouble. Because if you're current, you're not going to be getting a notice, and it's not going to be on your radar. So maybe when they hear somebody who's come in, or if they have questions when people come in, they might be able to kind of like head them off at the pass before getting anything turned off.
So the CARES funding for utility bill assistance was in 2020. We were not as good at translating into foreign language in 2020 as we were in 21. And we weren't as good in 21 as we're going to be in 2022. Mm-hmm. We've put a good system in place where we put information on the website and then include in the top 5 languages on our mailing pieces how to then go to the website and use the translate function. So I think that is something that we would look to do here in communicating on utility billing issues. The other thing is that we do have a language line available and train our employees in how to do that. So as we have these verbal conversations with residents, that's a tool that we can use to make sure that the communication is clear.
Okay. Thank you, Derek. Thanks again, Molly. Okay, we'll move on to our next item C on the 5 business is our November financial report, and Michelle Ferguson.
Good afternoon, Council. I'm Michelle Ferguson, Financial Planning Manager, and I'll be presenting an overview of the November 2021 monthly financial report. All right, so I've highlighted the sales tax at the bottom of this slide, and the revenues have been coming in continually strong over 2021. These revenues are estimated to come in roughly $5 million above budget. Excluding annexation sales tax revenues, the 2021 sales tax and use tax revenues are estimated to be nearly $3 million above those same revenues in 2020. The revenue growth has started to plateau, and it is unlikely that these large variances will continue in 2022. Highlighted on this slide is the utility tax revenue. Overall, these revenues are anticipated to come in on budget or slightly over. The electric, gas, and garbage utility taxes are expected to come in slightly over, while the telephone utility tax is likely going to come in under budget. And for the same reason as before, people are starting to get rid of their landline phones and just use cell phones. So this slide compares the general fund's 2019 and 2020 actuals to the 2021 adjusted budget and estimated actuals. Overall, the 2021 general fund revenues have showed some recovery from 2020. The revenues highlighted in blue are anticipated to come in lower than in 2020. Revenues for licenses and permits and miscellaneous revenues are anticipated to come in slightly lower, only about $200,000 combined. The transfer in revenues will likely be about $3.3 million lower than in 2020, and that is due to one-time transfers in 2020, $1 million from the Health and Wellness Fund and $2 million for CARES funding. Overall, 2021 revenues are estimated to come in about $2.2 million over 2020 revenues and $4 million over the 2021 adjusted budget. All departments on the bottom section are anticipated to come in under budget in 2021, which will be an estimated savings of $3.7 million. On these next 3 slides, some of the funds that are anticipated to have large changes from the budget to estimated actuals for the net revenues less expenditures have been highlighted. So the Capital Resources Fund was budgeted to use $2.5 million of fund balance in 2021, and estimates are showing that the fund balance will actually increase by $9.6 million by year end. This is due to the restoration of the SST revenues, so $3.6 million of back payment from 2020, plus an additional $1.8 million for a total of $5.4 for SST revenues. Sales tax revenues are estimated to come in $1.3 million over budget, and REIT revenues are estimated to be at least $3.4 million over budget. For the Criminal Justice Fund, it was budgeted to use nearly $500,000 of fund balance in 2021, but estimates are now showing that the fund balance will actually increase by over $1.7 million by year end. The red light camera revenues are estimated to come in $800,000 over budget, and the criminal justice sales tax revenues are estimated to come in $650,000 over budget. The fleet fund has been highlighted on this slide. It was estimated to use $686,000 of fund balance, but now the estimates are showing that it'll increase by $914,000 by year end. This increase to fund balance will be temporary because $875,000 will need to be carried forward from 21 to 22 due to vehicles that have been ordered but not yet delivered. The Facilities Fund is also highlighted because it was budgeted to use $1.68 million in fund balance, but estimates are now showing that the fund balance will actually increase by about $600,000. This change to fund balance is mainly due to unspent budgets in the facility's life cycle. And those unspent line items will need to be carried forward from 21 into 22 as well. And this last slide highlighted is the Liability Insurance Fund. And this fund was budgeted to add $2.8 million to fund balance due to a transfer in that we did earlier in the year. But estimates are now showing that over $4 million will be added to the fund's fund balance, and that is mainly due to reimbursements that the fund has received for costs above retention. Are there any questions?
It looks pretty good. Anything you concerned about?
Just kind of that plateauing of the sales tax.
Yeah.
But, time will tell. That's a 2-month lag, so the numbers that we saw in November are really for sales back in September. So we're not going to know kind of December numbers until the beginning of March.
Yeah.
So it's hard to really get a gauge on where that's going.
So far, so good, though, right?
Hey, plateau is better than decreasing.
It could be worse, so yes. Any question from Michelle team? Okay, thank you so much.
Right, thank
good
you.
job as usual, Michelle. Okay, is Chris here? He's remote. Oh, he's remote. That's right. I forgot about it. Hey, Chris.
Hey there. Hello, everyone.
It's all yours.
Thank you. I am Chris Hills, the risk manager, and this afternoon I'm going to update you on the 3 insurance programs that renewed January 1. Those are the Liability Fund, Excess Worker Compensation, and Cyber Liability. I would tell you up front that there are a couple of themes that run through all of these renewals. Those are double-digit premium increases in all of those premiums, and an increase in the amount of risk that we are expected to bear ourselves in all cases as well. So not going to be great news, I can tell you that. Kim, can you go to the second slide, please?
I have the second slide up, Chris. You can't see it.
Oh, I'm sorry. I guess
Okay.
I now can't see it. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
In liability, we're really looking at some unprecedented market conditions that continue. I described these last year, and really they continue. We're seeing increased litigation, broader contract interpretations, a very plaintiff-friendly legal decisions that are getting made, and much larger jury awards that are getting made overall. The insurance industry itself is seeing more and larger claims as a result of these trends. As a result, the effect has been that some insurers are leaving the market altogether. That has a tendency then to limit the capacity of the market to absorb as much risk as it has in the past. And it means that the risk appetite of the remaining insurers becomes limited. So in the end, there's a increased focus on the pricing of risk, and underwriters are really looking hard at any customers that they're insureds that they're looking at insuring. In our applications for various coverages this year, we really had to provide a lot more data than we have in the past as they evaluated the city of Kent as a risk. Next slide, please. This chart is an update of a chart that I've shown in the past. It reflects one of those key elements of social inflation, and that is what the largest jury awards, we're tracking the 50 largest jury awards in each individual year here. 2019 is a bit of a discrepancy due to an $8 billion pharma verdict. And then also there was a $2 billion toxic exposure products liability case that settled in California. So you can see there's a bit of a spike due to that. But overall, you can see that the trend line for jury verdicts in the 50 largest are continuing to go upward. Again, an element of that social inflation. Next slide, please, Kim. So there have been some local impacts. One of the insurers of a large number of cities and some counties here in the state announced last spring that they're leaving the market, actually in the state of Washington. Also, the costs of jury trials and settlements continues to escalate dramatically. We're finding that plaintiff counsel, they tend to go into voluminous discovery requests. They make an extraordinary number of motions during the course of litigation, and they're unwilling really to settle when and if we go to a mediation at all. And then finally, there's a tort. There is no tort cap in the state of Washington. Unlike some other states, for instance, in Oregon, there's a tort cap. So in Oregon, cities and counties don't really have to purchase as much insurance as they do here. And there's this skepticism of government and specifically of police, and we've seen that increase over the past few years, as I'm sure you've seen in the news, some of the extremely large settlements that have occurred involving police use of force cases. Next slide, please, Kim. So this slide reflects the city's liability insurance programs. On the left is last year's program, and on the right, this year's program. And you'll notice that they're similar. We have the same insurers this year as we had last year. This is really great news. As I said, there have been a number of carriers who have actually dropped out of the market altogether. So we've been very fortunate to maintain all of the same carriers. We did have an increase in the self-insured retention, which I'll talk a little bit more on the next slide. If you could go to that, Kim. So specifically, our self-insured retention, or what you might also know as a deductible, increased from $750,000 in 2020 to now $1.25 million per claim in 2022. Additionally, the premium we're paying for that coverage increased from about $950,000 in 2021, to $1.142 million in 2022. Next slide, please. This slide details our liability premium history since 2004. Recent premium increases and self-insured retention increases continue. You would also note that since 2020, our self-insured retention has increased from $500,000 up to $1.25 million. That's an increase of 150% in the past 2 years. That's to a large extent a result of market conditions that I talked about a bit earlier. Combined with the city's loss experience, the result is also a 25% premium increase, and again, that increase in the self-insured retention. Next slide, please. So now I'm going to talk a little bit about our excess worker compensation program. On the left-hand side of this slide is the 2021 program, and on the right-hand side is the 2022 program. The market here has been really affected by some negative loss development, particularly for law enforcement, as we continue to see attacks on law enforcement around the country. 2021 had the highest number of U.S. law enforcement officers killed in the line of duty since 9/11. That gets reflected in premiums around the country for this excess worker compensation coverage. Then combined with the city's loss experience, we're looking at a 25% premium increase and an increase of the self-insured retention for law enforcement from $750,000 to $1 million per loss, per claim. Next slide, please. We do remain with Safety National Insurance. They have been our partner for the last 25 years, actually more than 25 years. Premium did increase, and also, as I said, the police self-insured retention did increase. I would point out, however, that losses paid over 20 years continue to be greater than the premium that we have paid to Safety National during that same time period. Our loss ratio is 150%, and that means that for every dollar we have paid to Safety National in premium, they have paid out $1.50 on our behalf for claims. And next slide, please. Moving on to cyber liability. The coverage renewal there really has been affected, as I'm sure you've heard, by cybersecurity attacks around the world. Particularly, we've seen a lot of them in the United States. Ransomware has been rampant. We're aware of it both for other cities around the country. Also, the cybersecurity attack on the Employment Security Department was notable right here in the state of Washington. The market response has been really significant. There are a number of customers of liability coverage who have not been renewed. They're going to be going without coverage over the next year. And many customers are certainly seeing higher retentions and higher premiums, as you'll see in the next slide for us. Sorry. I did want to mention that this really was an incredibly difficult renewal, but a lot of great work was done by our team in IT, particularly James Endicott and his team. They answered a ton of questions from the possible cyber insurance companies who provide our coverage to us. As I mentioned, a lot of questions, and this year's questions around cyber were just voluminous. We filled out probably 7 or 8 different applications to get to the coverage we ended up with this year. IT staff continue to work directly with our new cyber insurer, and I would say both of our teams, their team and our team, benefit from that. We have a ransomware training session scheduled with the ELT in February, and again, I think that will benefit certainly the city's cybersecurity efforts. And finally, on to that last slide, Kim. As I mentioned, all of the renewals this year were very difficult. I work with Finance Director Paula Painter and with Michelle Ferguson significantly on ensuring with our actuary that we have enough money in these funds to cover expected losses based on the projections of our actuary. And I'm happy to answer any questions you might have about any of these renewals. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. Appreciate your presentation. Councilmember Thomas.
Thank you, Mr. President. So, Chris, if you shopped around, you probably wouldn't be able to find another firm with probably better rates than what they're offering here, even though they seem quite high to us after all these years. But probably the best deal going, wouldn't you say, at this point, or not?
Yes, Councilmember Thomas, that's absolutely the case. We fortunately work with a terrific insurance brokerage firm, Alliant, who are the top insurance firm for public entities in the country. And they have access to just markets all over the place for this sort of coverage. They, as would Marsh or other large brokerages, have a lot of difficulty getting this coverage for any of their customers who were government customers. I've seen increased, talking with other risk managers, everyone has had increased retentions, and premiums just continue to go up all across the market. And this was definitely the best coverage and premium that we could end up getting this year. True, yes.
Thank you, Chris.
Any other questions for Chris, team? Oh, I keep seeing my name here, but it's not me. Councilmember Troutner.
Thank you, Council President. Chris, thank you so much. You always do a great job presenting information that is not necessarily super great news. Just to clarify, if I heard you correctly, the amount of money that's been paid out by insurance, we've still paid less than that in our premiums. Is that what you had said?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that, Councilmember Troutner? I'm sorry, I didn't perhaps
the
catch
amount
all
of
your
money
questions.
that's been paid out in claims, did you say that we've still paid less than that in our premiums?
In workers.
Oh, for workers' comp, okay.
Well, and also for liability.
Okay.
In both of those programs, we have paid less in premium than has been paid on our behalf for claims that have been settled.
Okay, all right. Well, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay. Thank you, Chris. Appreciate it.
Thank you all. Much appreciated. Take care now.
Okay, we're going to go next to our next presentation, Race and Equity Strategic Plan Update. And URL is going to be, yes, remote. All right.
Good afternoon, Council. I hope you're hearing me okay.
Yep.
This is Gaila. I'm the Race and Equity Manager. I'm here to provide you with an update about the strategic plan. Kim, I can't see the slides rolling. Are they currently up?
Yes, we're on
the... Okay, I see it. Okay, thank you. Can you go to the next slide? Sorry, previous slide. So first of all, before I start, I want to share that my computer's not cooperating, so I'm doing this via phone. So I apologize if there's difficulty navigating. So I'm going to go over a refresher of what I was updating you during our last update. I'm going to go over the code designing process and what that looks like for the strategic plan. I'm going to share the 2022 meeting schedule as well as the equity project matrix. Next slide, please. So as a refresher, we conducted community engagement over the summer. We held interviews in English, Spanish during the Kent's co-sponsored health fair. We had 5 community listening sessions in English, Spanish, and Kurdish, and Arabic. And we also had interviews, one-on-one interviews with community-based organizations and partners. That resulted in a community engagement report. And the data from the report was used by the internal interdepartmental core team to develop the areas of focus as well as the initial preliminary goals. Next slide, please. Here are the goals, the areas of focus for the strategic plan. So we settled on communication, in-language resources, equitable representation, training, and community engagement. Again, this was done via a data-informed approach by the community engagement process over the summer. Next slide, please. During the last session, the update that I provided you, I believe was right before the vetting sessions with the community. So we held a total of 3 vetting sessions, one in Arabic and Kurdish on December 1st, one in Spanish on December 4th, and one in English on December 9th. And the community vetted the BIPOC engagement report, the community engagement report that was created during the summer, as well as the preliminary areas of focus and universal goals. So on the right, you can see the highlights from the vetting sessions. The areas of focus were approved by participants in every session. The participants also shared that we need to be more explicit and call out race in our universal goals for each area of focus. They also shared that we needed to be more transparent when it came to funding. They wanted to include the community throughout the process. They want us to communicate the victories because there is good work being done at the moment, and it's important for us to communicate that information. They wanted us to acknowledge past harm, and we received a crash course on that over the last few weeks. They wanted us to implement action items while the planning was in process. They wanted us to hire from the community, and this was specifically related to interpreters. And they wanted us to partner with community-based organizations for job announcements when they go out. And finally, the most important piece, according to the vetting sessions, it's very important to report back to the community, even if it's bad information or negative information or news. Next slide, please. This is one of the quotes that kind of stuck with me during one of the vetting sessions. This is the vetting session in Spanish, and the participant shared that she shared, "I want the city to see the community as a fountain of knowledge and ideas that are ready to be shared. To me, that signals that we're ready to call the community Kent in and have them help us co-design the strategic plan and other plans as we move towards the future." Next slide, please. After the vetting sessions, we took the information that was provided by the stakeholders and included that information into the strategic goals. So I'm going to, on the left, on the arrows, you can see the areas of focus, and on the right, you can see the universal goals that were created with the information provided by the stakeholders. So for communication, the goal is the City of Kent is committed to building an inclusive and well-informed community by working to improve communication about city services in a manner that is culturally relevant and equitable. For in-language resources, the City of Kent is committed to providing culturally relevant services and information in multiple languages. I heard the conversation about the translation, and we're currently working on a limited English proficiency plan. It's almost ready to go, and we have the funding to translate into the top 5 languages. So that is in process. And I'll share a little bit more during the equity matrix update. For equitable representation, this was one of the areas where they wanted us to be a little bit less complex in wording and the words that we use. So this is how it reads now. The City of Kent recruits and retains a talented workforce that is increasingly reflective of the community we serve across all positions, from frontline staff, advisory boards and commissions to executive leadership. On training, the City of Kent will provide anti-racist and culturally relevant training along with other topics that foster constructive communication and cross-cultural understanding for city representatives and the broader community. And finally, the last one, the area of focus is community engagement, and the goal is the City of Kent engages in relationship building through ongoing dialogue, outreach, and inclusion, centering racial equity in our approach. Are there any questions about the areas of focus or the goals?
I always ask this question, do you? So I like the focus and the goals, but where are the measurement, the goals, to be sure to kind of...
That's a good question. So the measurements will come from the action items. We'll be measuring how the action items are moving the work forward and reaching the goals. So once we have more information on the action items, when those are co-designed with community, we'll have a better understanding of what the measurables will be, and I will be sharing that to make sure that we are on the right track when it comes to reaching these goals.
So will your plan also, you establish a baseline just to see where you're at on some of these things and then measure yourself going forward from that?
Yes, we will have baselines based on data that we currently have and are collecting, and then we'll use that information to move forward and measure the outcomes of each individual action item.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Next slide, please. So this is what the co-designing of the action items will look like. And the first stakeholder session is going to happen tomorrow evening, and it's going to be an onboarding session where we're going to onboard them on what the plan looks like as of now, where we are now, and Derek Matheson will be providing a shortened Kent 101 presentation for the stakeholders to kind of understand a little bit more of the context behind the city, what the city can and cannot do. So as you can see on your screen, this is what the co-designing process looks like. So we have, we're going to start with communications. The community stakeholder group will work on the action items, guiding criteria by area of focus, and will propose action items. This will then go to our internal core team, our interdepartmental core team, and the core team will work on the action items for the goal using the stakeholder guiding criteria and proposed action items. That information will then go back. The preliminary action items and performance measures will go back to the stakeholder group for vetting, and then we will present the information, including the final area of focus, goal, action items, and performance measures with ELT and council, and then that process will continue, repeat again, with in-language resources, equitable representation, training, and community engagement. We are thinking that this will take about 6 months, and then this next slide will provide you with more information on what that schedule looks like. Are there any questions about this process? No? Okay. Next slide, please. So we will be, the stakeholder team or stakeholder group, which is comprised of community residents, City of Kent residents, will be meeting twice a month during the first and third Wednesday of the month. The core team will be meeting once a month during the second Wednesday of the month, and then I will be providing an ELT update and council update after those sessions. So if you can see on the calendar to the right, our first stakeholder meeting is happening tomorrow evening, as mentioned, and this is going to be onboarding. For February, the area of focus will be communications. The meeting dates for the stakeholder team are February 2nd and February 16th. The core team is meeting on February 9th, and the update to council will be on March 1st. So I'm not going to go over every single date, but this is what the process will look like as far as updating you all on what the process looks like for the action items for the strategic plan and next steps. Any questions about the schedule?
Councilmember Troutner.
Thank you, Council President. Yuri, I'm sorry, have you mentioned how many people are included in that stakeholder meeting group?
Yes, sorry, I haven't mentioned, but it's going to be 10 stakeholders, and the stakeholders will be compensated for their time.
All right, thank you.
Mm-hmm. It's a smaller group of stakeholders than the initial community engagement process because this is going to be a conversation. Each meeting will be around 2 hours long, and it's going to be more of a conversation in creating these action items. And next slide, please. So this is the equity project matrix, and the projects you'll see on the left and the status you'll see on the right. So we have the equity and inclusion speaker series, and this is, we're already planning for 2022, and we're currently working with the Jewish Federation of Greater Seattle to plan for the first speaker series to be around anti-Semitism. And we're, like I said, we're working with the Jewish Federation of Greater Seattle to select a date because they've offered to provide the speaker for us. The KempD website is complete. The equity practice annual checkup, this will be part of the strategic plan. We'll be checking the measurables and how we're reaching or not reaching our goals for each area of focus. Council resolution regarding police. Is there a police de-escalation policy? I believe this was Senate Bill 5066. The citywide training, we completed mandatory training in 2021 with Aaron Jones, and we're currently planning the mandatory training for race and equity for 2022 through 2025. The hiring process, this was completed in 2021, and at the bottom of the status, you can see some of the action items that are going to be part of this process of reviewing job descriptions for any barriers that shouldn't be there. So you can see on the right, it says we're reviewing job descriptions to eliminate unnecessary barriers. We're expanding job announcement distribution lists to include local community-based partners, libraries, and colleges. We're making a diverse interview panel mandatory for every one of the interviews that we conduct for new potential employees. We're making mandatory implicit bias awareness training for panelists before the interview, and we're using the Kerwin Institute's implicit bias training modules. So these are about 15 minutes long, and we're asking each one of the panelists for interviews to complete this training. And finally, we're looking to institute a blind recruitment process, but again, I think we have some limitations when it comes to our technology at the moment, and we're hoping to be able to do that sometime this year. We still have to have those conversations with HR, but this is something that we're looking to implement.
We have a question for you, Councilmember Larmer,
yes.
please.
Yes.
I'm questioning the green complete status on the hiring process review. It seems to me that a lot of these are forward-looking statements, looking, reviewing, making. So I feel like that one, it's fair to say that I feel like that should actually be in progress.
I didn't hear the full comment, but I think I got most of it. So yes. This is not going to be a one-off. So we're constantly going to be evaluating our process. And that's part of the racial equity strategic plan, re-evaluating process as we go along. So this is not the end-all be-all of the list of action items that I propose for HR to implement. But the conversation is going to continue, and we're going to figure out ways of making sure that we don't have any barriers to do with race and equity when it comes to our hiring process.
Okay, so follow up question. I'm wondering when you might be able to. When would it be fair to ask you if we've seen an improvement in this area, based on when some of these things may be implemented? I mean, would it be, by mid-summer?
I'm sorry, council member. It's really difficult to hear the comments.
My mic was not on. I apologize. I could hear myself in the room, but you couldn't hear me. So my question is, based on that, there's still a lot of work to do in this area. When would be fair to come back to you and ask for like a progress update? Is it like, by midsummer, could we find out if we've seen the needle move at all on our hiring processes? Would it be midsummer? Would it be fall? Because I know that this is an area that, I think had kind of prioritized when we first talked about extending the plan. We wanted to make sure this work was still moving forward at a decent pace. So just
right. We will have updates, and part of that will be, if you look at the areas of focus for the strategic plan, one of them is equitable representation, and that has a lot to do with our hiring practices. So we want to hear from community members to hear what are barriers for them to being hired at the City of Kent, and include those action items that are coming from the community as part of the change that we want to see. And that will provide us with additional measurables that we can share with council and ELT.
We have an HR director up here.
Good afternoon, Council and Councilmember Larmer. Great questions. I didn't want to leave my colleague Uriel trying to answer that question when I was here in the room. So we are working on all of our job descriptions to look at the language and remove barriers. So that's an ongoing process. So as positions become open and we advertise the opportunities, we're making sure that we go through them as they come available. So right now we're kind of doing a one-off, and then as those job descriptions get cleaned up, we will be applying the language to the other job descriptions that might be in the family. And then with our non-represented compensation study that we're actually going to be making some selection on a vendor here in the very near future. One of the things we requested from the vendors are assistance with DEI language in our job descriptions. So I see that that's going to be a more holistic approach to about 150 job descriptions right there. And again, we'll learn information from that process from them and be able to roll that forward as well. So this is an ongoing process, as Uriel mentioned, but it's something that we're actively working on in an ongoing way.
do you feel like we will get to that point where we can say, because of the work we've done, we've seen X percent increase in BIPOC candidates or interviews with, I guess what I'm looking for is some measure of success, and when we might be able to start quantifying that
Once we
success?
start to look at that data, as we've made these changes, because the changes are just fairly recent, we'll be able to look at the data and see if we are moving the needle. And that is our goal, is that we are reaching more of our BIPOC community and other diverse communities, and that we're building that rapport with them and increasing that with them. So once we get that data going and we can look back and say it was because of X that we now have more, diverse candidates in the pool, we'll be able to provide that information.
Okay.
I want to follow up. My question was similar to Councilmember Larmer, right? And this is a tough task. I think in the job market today, it is very hard to find people to come in and apply for a job because people, for the most part, choose to do other things, start their own business and so on. So this can be tough. So I think we need to make sure that expectation is clear for us getting to that goal, because I know it's not going to happen overnight. So I will also, 'cause when I see these things green, I mean it's done, right? And you don't need to see something else to saying we're working on something else. So, for example, take your ongoing job description, right? So if you changing those as you go, if you got 150, then it'd be nice to say, well, we got 10 done, 12 done, 13. So we have some type of visibility on what's really getting done. I am going to have a hard time really just understanding the deliverable from this year. I see task-oriented type stuff, right? But for us, how I know how we going to know when we're there. And I don't see, and it's probably going to come as time goes on, but I don't see the end goal yet, and I'm not too sure what that look like. I got an idea, but I don't see it here yet. So, just FYI.
Perfect. Thank you for the input.
Any other comments, anybody? Okay, you can proceed. Go ahead.
So I mentioned the translation resources. So the limited English proficiency plan is in the works. We're almost done with it, and that will kind of guide our process when it comes to what documents to translate and what not to translate, as well as how we are communicating in various languages through our social media platforms. So that is in process. The equity manager hiring process is complete. The procurement task force, so we need to review the effects of Executive Order 2202 by Governor Inslee to figure out how that's going to affect the procurement changes if those happen. So my newly hired Race and Equity Coordinator, Maria Tizoc, has been leading this effort when it comes to the website, and I saw an outline this morning of what it will look like, and I think you will like that page on our new website, which will share updates on the Race and Equity Strategic Plan, as well as resources for both staff and residents to take advantage of if they'd like to do so. Any questions on this?
Okay. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
So we have one more to go here on our agenda item here, and this is the chief going to do some update. Chief Padilla. Don't worry about the time. If we have to go over into it, that's fine. I want to make sure you get what you need to get done.
All right, thank you. Good evening, Council President Boyce and members of City Council. As I committed to in the video statement Mayor Ralph and I put out a couple weeks ago now, we're working hard to provide information to our community on some of the issues that have come to light, while at the same time working to identify ways in which we can improve going forward. I'm going to cover 3 issues tonight in the presentation. While it's not regular practice of ours to air this misconduct by our employees publicly, right now we are taking extraordinary steps to be transparent, as you understand. Council should be aware that these incidents occurred prior, and in 2 situations these incidents occurred over a year ago and have all already been dealt with. So the first item I want to bring forward is regarding an article on use of force that was part of our suggested reading list that we give our new officers. This particular article, called Violence is Golden, has been on our reading list for several years. I was not aware of this article until December of last year. The intent of the article was to provide an alternative perspective on the need to use force to enforce the laws. A good percentage of our people that come in to become police officers come to us with little to no experience in using physical force. Many have not been in a fight ever, and now they are in a role where lives depend on their ability to effectively, lawfully use force when necessary.